This is The Weekly Set, an official podcast of TheTotalScreen.com.
I wish I was the monster you think I am.
You have come here to beseech me?
Can't ask for your soul.
Madness can be a medicine for the modern world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Weekly Set, the official podcast of The Total Screen. I am your host. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime here at The Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
So, today, for episode 279 of the podcast, recording on November 2nd, 2020, one day before the election, we are going to be talking about The Mandalorian Season 2 premiere, The Marshal. I guess we usually kind of end up going into summarizing it. And before we started the podcast, Will was like, if we summarize this, it's going to be like a 1-minute conversation.
I'm just saying, this is a pretty straightforward show with its writing. It's not, there's no mindfuckery. There's no time skipping. There's no puzzle boxes that you have to unwrap,
There's no character development.
There's no, there's no character development. It's just very simple. There is the Mandalorian, and there is a problem, and then the Mandalorian solves the problem, and then we go to the next episode. That is the structure.
This episode starts with Mando, or the Mandalorian, trying to interrogate somebody to get information on where some other Mandalorians might be, because that's his best guess on how to find Jedi, is to find Mandalorians, which just kind of seems a little weird,
Okay,
he wants the information network, I know, but
he wants
even still, it just feels a little weird,
because he's trying to get the child back to his species.
Yeah. So he ends up getting a piece of information that sends him back to Tatooine. And the second they start flying over Tatooine, I'm like, oh, fucking Tatooine again. I so want them to go to different places,
No, just go to Tatooine. Just you gotta tickle that nostalgia taint. You gotta constantly do that.
First of all, we haven't been in a while on anything. Go to Dagobah or something,
No, can't do it.
Has to be Tatooine.
Has to be Tatooine. The next movie is going to destroy all planets except for Tatooine, so that's the only place that you could be.
Yeah. It's just going to be nothing but Tatooine. Mm. Nothing but sand people and Jawas and...
Yeah, right? Yeah. So we go to Tatooine, the newest place that nobody's ever seen before.
Oh, it's crazy. Just world building, man. Introducing new things left and right.
Introducing new things. But it's cool because there's cool things on Tatooine, like Timothy Olyphant. Yeah. So that's awesome.
Oh, yeah, you could tell who it was just by his voice when he started talking. Yeah. You could practically tell when you just saw the way his posture. When he was in there before he even started talking. It was like, is that Timothy Olyphant?
Well, the episode's called The Marshal. Surprise!
Yeah.
I'm not saying somebody's being typecast, but they might just be a little bit typecast at this point.
Yeah.
But it's cool because, those rumors, I want to stress rumors, not facts. Those rumors of the actor playing the Mandalorian quitting halfway through season 2 and leaving? If that happened, then the only acceptable replacement would be Timothy Olyphant and just turning it into Justified in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
Then I'd be cool with that.
Might be even better. As much as I love, Pedro Pascal.
Yeah.
As much as I love him, man, it might be even better if it's Timothy Olyphant running around the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, exactly. I want to see that now.
Well, thankfully, they ended with his character in this episode basically implying that they were going to see each other again.
Yeah. Thankfully, he doesn't die or anything, so that's good.
Yeah. Well, not just that, but they specifically say, I hope to see you again real soon, or something, which is screaming, new cameo, or,
Yeah. It's just screaming they're leaving it open to bring that character back whenever they feel like it.
Yeah. I think the way they phrased it means it's probably going to be in this season we're going to see him again. And the same way we saw like, what's it? Gina Carrera, is that her name? The actress that played Shock Trooper.
Yeah, they brought her back for like the finale last season.
They had her like in, I think 3 episodes total or something. But yeah, they brought her back and stuff. And like, I could totally see them doing that again for Cobb Vanth, which is Timothy Olyphant's character. It's interesting when we first see Timothy Olyphant's character, he's wearing Boba Fett's armor, which is like immediately apparent not just by the visor thing on the helmet, but also by the actual damage to the suit, which we've seen before, you know?
And the coloring of the suit. Like,
yeah.
It's Boba's colors. So yeah, it's Boba Fett's. Mando doesn't like this because, you know, it's Mandalorian armor. It belongs with the Mandalorians.
And then,
yeah, this leads to like a tense standoff until a crate dragon like interrupts it.
Yeah, they're just shimmying through town.
It's the point where like the episode becomes Tremors.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Basically to kind of like get through the episode quickly because I have topics like I want to go over, but we can kind of just sum up what ends up happening is they end up, they meet up with like the Sand People. Cobb Vanth and Mando end up meeting up with some Sand People and talking to them, and we find out that the town of Mos Pelgo, which is what Cobb's character is the Marshal of, is this small kind of like town that's just completely fallen apart into the sand. Basically, it's like barely hanging on or whatever, and the people there like they kind of trust in Cobb's character as their Marshal of the town. And that's cool too, because when they go into the town and Mando's talking to like the bartender, that bartender's from Deadwood, the actor. So it's just another like Timothy Olyphant connection, you know?
Right, exactly.
But they go out because the crate dragon's like an issue, and basically Mando wants the armor because, you know, Cobb is not a Mandalorian, so he shouldn't have that armor. And so Mando wants that armor from him. It starts getting to like a tense encounter, but then when that crate dragon goes through, they kind of come to a conclusion. Cobb says, I'll give you the armor if you help me get rid of this crate dragon. And so they go off, they meet up, like I said, with some Sand People, and the Sand People have been suffering from this crate dragon for quite a while now. And so they want to get rid of it too. So this is communicated back to Cobb from Mando, who can speak to them. And you find out that the town of Mos Pelgo and the town of these Sand People have been kind of like fighting each other for a while now. There's like a lot of bad blood. But, you know, there's a shared enemy, and that's the crate dragon. That brings them together, and it just becomes a predictable, you gotta team up to take out the bigger threat show, and that's pretty much it. Like everything else you can pretty much predict, down to the way that they end up taking him out is like through his mouth. It's like, how obvious was that going to be a thing, you know?
I mean, I don't care. It was entertaining.
Yeah, but I mean, like, the second you saw that thing and you knew that they were going to try to fight it, you knew that they were going to do it by putting something inside its mouth, right?
Oh, yeah, I knew that.
It's like the most obvious, like, tropey cliche, but I mean, it was still entertaining as a show just because it was like, you know, a special effects spectacle, and it's a show that is unapologetic in the way that it relishes in its Western tropes and stuff.
It's tropey. It does not care about being trope. It does not care that it's tropey and that it's not being imaginative with those tropes. This show does not give a shit.
Yeah, it's just like, we're just going to play with these traditional tropes that you know, and we're going to present them from this different angle of it being in the Star Wars universe. Yeah. You know, which is funny because it's like Star Wars always kind of had a bit of a Western aesthetic because it was kind of a copy of like samurai films, which were always deeply connected to like Westerns. Like back when like Kurosawa was making films, like he would make a film and then they would adapt it in America as a Western, you know, like that. It was like a very common link. It's Western makers in Hollywood were like, when's the next Akira Kurosawa movie coming out so we can figure out how we're going to turn it into a Western, you know?
That's some deep film knowledge. But
but so it's like, it connects to that, you know, like Star Wars is intrinsically tied to Westerns by that connection to like Kurosawa.
Right. Right.
That was established early on. Plus, I mean, Desert Planet, that's like, how much more Western can you get, you know?
Right. Yeah, so let's talk about that fight with the crate dragon. We were talking before the podcast, you pointed out that like it's similar in structure to like like a video game boss fight.
Oh yeah, it's in phases.
Yeah,
and I think the moment this became crystal clear to me was the moment that that it retreated and then emerged from the top of the cliff or whatever.
Oh yeah, and then started spitting acid. Yeah,
yeah, it was like this is straight up a video game.
Yeah, that's such a video game thing because it has like the first phase where it's just lunging out and it's like biting and chomping and trying to eat everything in sight.
And that's when you can do your damage.
And that's when you can do your damage. And then it retreats
and does a bunch of area of effect attacks.
Yeah, and then it does it just launches like a brand new attack that you didn't know it had, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it comes out with a new weapon and everything that area of effect attacks that you gotta avoid. And then to finish it off, you gotta, lure it back out and stuff a bantha full of explosives into its mouth.
Well, they also did the whole thing where, like, before they did the whole bantha with explosives thing, they brought in all these explosives to detonate, and they buried them. So they took all this time to bury them, to set this trap, to do the whole thing.
It doesn't work that well, though.
It doesn't do anything, but when they were doing it, they said, this is our only shot. And then, like, after it goes off and everything goes wrong, then, like, it pans back over and there's a bantha with a whole bunch of explosives still on it. It's like, it's our only shot, except this other shot.
Yeah, that's true. It's like, this is our only shot. This is our one shot. Well, except for the bantha full of explosives that we're just going to conveniently not put too much focus on right now. Yeah.
I thought that was kind of funny. I mean, another thing we could bring up about this fight is just the crate dragon. This is like Game of Thrones level special effects, you know?
Yeah, it is. It is. Like the thing
like
about
late Game of Thrones, like super high budget Game of Thrones.
The thing about these is these are not being done with television. But Disney is throwing feature film Disney is throwing the same budget at this as they threw at like Star Wars, like Episode 9. Like this is what Disney is doing. They're doing the same thing with the Marvel shows. They're funding it as if they were full-length films that they would release in the theaters. They're not funding these like TV shows.
I wonder if they're saving money by sharing assets because they're in these big extended universes. That now they have I don't think they had a big CG crate dragon model before, but they have it for this, and that means that now they can use that same one in like a movie or in something else. So I wonder if that's part of how they're able to really go like this extreme in budget on something like this. Is, I mean, obviously they're putting money in, period, but just the fact that because it's this huge extended universe, they can reuse these assets.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
And part of that is besides the crate dragon itself for special effects, and we talked about this when we talked about season 1 of The Mandalorian, but they have a really cool way of shooting this, where they shoot on these video sets, where basically they have real-time CG being piped into basically an array of monitors that surround that's the set. The set is just a whole bunch of monitors. So they don't film in front of green screens, and they don't film on location and insert CGI. They literally have these gigantic monitor rooms. And then the camera is synced to the monitor so that it can track where things are and stuff, so that you get the right perspective. Mm-hmm. And then the backgrounds and stuff, they're all real time. It's running in Unreal Engine. So it's literally video game stuff, you know, but really, really high end. And then so when the camera moves, the backgrounds move proportionally so that it matches. And so you have all these sets and stuff. And in the same way that they built this crate dragon thing, they have these sets that they've built, these detailed real-time 3D rendered sets that they can now use for movies or for other shows, because there's going to be other shows. I mean, we already know there's going to be that Obi-Wan Kenobi show and stuff.
Well, yeah, they want to milk the shit out of it.
That's got to be on Tatooine, right?
That's going to be exclusively on Tatooine. They're going to reuse these sets hardcore for that show.
Yeah, so it's by doing that, they're able to do these kind of things that it's kind of rare. I mean, they're going to be pushing, I think, very quickly. They're going to be pushing beyond even what Game of Thrones was doing, just because they have these shared assets, you know?
Yeah, and also it's Disney. They have ungodly amounts of money to throw at whatever they want to.
Yeah,
so,
and I mean, Mandalorian's already a huge hit and stuff. So
yeah,
but yeah, it's an interesting point of conversation though, that this is something that just would not have been done before. I remember I used to always think when I was really getting into filmmaking and stuff like that, and when I was into video games and stuff, I was always wondered why there wasn't like a third party company that would like make models that could be reconfigured for games. And there is that to some extent, but it's usually like on the low end. But I always wondered like, why doesn't EA like build like a mountain town and then they can use that in like a racing game for like tracks, and then they can use it again for like a snowboarding game by adding like snow effects to it and stuff. And then they can use it again like in a GTA style game, and like they could like use that same asset over and over again with like slight modifications. And you probably wouldn't even notice the similarities, because if you're using it in a snowboarding game or a skiing game, you're only getting kind of the hillside. If you're using it in a racing game, then you're building specific tracks on certain routes. And if you're using it like in a GTA, then you're getting kind of the whole exposure of that. But it's I never understood why that wasn't done more as like a way to save money when you have like these big companies, you know? And EA actually, I think, did that. I think it was EA that did it for like a while, where they actually made like a location that they reused a few times in several of their properties. And I always thought like, oh, this is probably going to be the future. And it would make sense like maybe sometime that a third party, that would be their sole job, is they would make like literal like non-existent locations that could be bought by other like game companies and stuff.
Right.
And I always thought the same thing for like movies and stuff. The idea of like, okay, so you could make like a CG model of a person, like not like an alien species, but just a person. And then just as like an actor can get a haircut, can get a tan, can get, you know, like they can use prosthetics and stuff, that they can make slight modifications to it. And they could literally cast this CG character across multiple things, you know?
Right.
So I always thought that this was something that would make sense, just because as budgets kept going up, it would be a way to kind of conserve money and stuff. But now they never did that, I think, because they just didn't want to like feel like they were, I guess that they had that cheapness of using something over again or something, that they thought audiences might react badly to that. But with these big extended universes, that really opens up the possibility to like do this without it feeling cheap at all, because these are these same locations, you know, so why not use them again? And Star Wars and Marvel and stuff like that, those provide those kind of opportunities to reuse like assets like that. So
right.
I kind of think that's interesting that, you know, like that this is probably what's going to be happening. I mean, we know they're reusing sets within the Mandalorian, you know, like from season 1 to season 2, or from episode 1 to episode 8, you know, they're going to reuse assets for that and stuff. But we know also that it's almost a certainty that they're going to reuse these assets and shoot in a very similar way when they do the Obi-Wan Kenobi like series, and that they could even do this with the movies. And with the movies, it might even make more sense, because they could literally take like giant CG sets and things that they make specifically for the movies, things that you'd never see on TV because it's just too high of a scale. And why not use it for TV if you have a show in that setting, you know? If you already have the asset, you know, why not reuse it? So I think that's like an interesting thing about The Mandalorian is almost more interesting than the show itself, is like how it's made and kind of what that means. I think I have even more hopes in this regard to like what Marvel's going to be doing with their Marvel shows, even though they're not filming them the same way, but just in the sense that this is like the theoretical Netflix model taken to its logical conclusion. Like, remember when Netflix started dropping like whole seasons at once? And that was like such a huge thing. And the way Netflix was kind of advertising is like, okay, well, just think of the episodes as chapters of a book, or think of the whole thing as like one big long movie, and you can watch it at your own pace, you know, rather than thinking about it like TV. But you still got a lot of like TV structural stuff within those Netflix shows, just because that's the way that it's been made. Mandalorian still has that kind of TV episodic structure because of literally the show is very episodic. It's very like episode to episode individual stories and stuff. But like, I think when the Marvel stuff ends up coming out, it's going to much more feel like a long movie, like that original promise of what the Netflix shows were going to be. I think it's going to be much more in that vein than even what Netflix was able to accomplish.
For sure. Absolutely.
So yeah. I guess we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the key Easter eggs in this because there's some important ones. I don't want to talk about every little thing. Like, oh, here you see that he's wearing the color blue, and
I don't want to do that.
I don't care about that. But there's two key Easter egg things that are actually central kind of to the plot, I think.
Yeah.
Like bigger ones. One is, and this is my first moment, and I recognized it as a pod racer, but I didn't recognize it as Anakin's pod racer. And that's, you see when the Mandalorian's taking off on a speeder and Cobb catches up with him and he's riding on the engine of a pod racer. My tweet I put out was like, and here comes Timothy Oliphant, like riding a phallic pod racer. Came in like very phallically, like pushed ahead, and he kind of gave like Mando a look like, yeah, mine's bigger than yours kind of thing, I thought it was really funny. Like it just seemed like a bit of adult humor that was thrown in there, like without any actual dialogue or anything, just like a visual gag almost. But what's important there is that's literally one of the engines from Anakin's pod racer from episode 1. It's literally like the exact same shape and dimensions, it's the same thing. So I thought that was really kind of funny and kind of cool that's one thing that I think Mandalorian does well with all these Easter eggs and stuff that just seem like fan service, is that it really gives a feeling that the world is lived in when you do things like that.
Right. I'm not a big enough nerd to recognize Anakin's pod racer. I watched that movie like once in 1999, and I did not care for that movie. Not enough to go, oh, that's Anakin's pod racer.
I didn't recognize it as Anakin's till I saw some people pointing it out.
Right.
But I recognized it as a pod racer. Right. Off the bat,
right.
Just by the way it looked and stuff. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of, is an interesting touch. And then the other kind of big kind of Easter egg thing that actually is much more like plot heavy is that one of the cameos we had.
I gotta quickly interject that I don't know who that was at the end of the episode. I don't know who that was at the end of the episode, but I went to the mall today and I got myself some boba tea and it was delicious.
Boba tea is
the
really
waitress.
good.
The waitress was also pretty fetching, So I don't know. That had nothing to do with anything, but I thought I'd bring that up. I still don't know who the man at the end of the episode was.
It was a cameo performed by an actor who's been in the movies. Playing a different character that is directly connected to the said character that he's portraying here. So I guess if you want to play it coy, I'll play it coy, but I guess that's the most we can go into that one. But
I'm just fooling around. It's the actor who played Boba Fett.
We played Jango Fett. He played like Boba Fett's the source
clones
of his clone. Yeah.
Yeah, they're clones, doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, it was the guy who played, we don't want people to think it's the guy who played Boba Fett in Return of the Jedi or something,
Yeah.
This is the guy who played, Boba Fett's father / source of clone in episode 2, in episode 3 as well, I believe. And he is the source for what Boba Fett would end up being, so he's like, Boba Fett's like a clone of him. And so it's the same actor playing that role. And this had been confirmed before the show had come that he was going to be having a cameo, and everybody kind of basically knew, oh, well, then he's playing Boba Fett. It's Boba Fett's one of his clones.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But they did a really good job of the way they put it into this episode.
Yeah.
Because you started out, I mean, the first real thing you get with it is that when he gets the information about a Mandalorian or somebody in Mandalorian armor on Tatooine, that immediately brings up Boba Fett to our recollections,
Right.
And then when he actually goes to the planet and stuff and he meets Cobb Vanth. Cobb Vanth is wearing Boba Fett's literal armor, his actual armor, So that's like, oh, okay. So he got that, and you get kind of the story of where he got it from. It was some Jawa raiders that took it, or not raiders, but collectors that found it, and he got it from them. So it's like, okay, well, they must have it must have been burped up from the Sarlacc pit or something, and they were able to scavenge it. Then they talk about the fact that the crate dragon that was like the big boss fight of this episode is in an abandoned Sarlacc pit. And they use that kind of as like a thing to show that the crate dragon is so big that it like literally probably ate the crate dragon. Or that ate the Sarlacc.
It ate the Sarlacc.
And took over the pit. And we see the pit from a different angle, but the implication is that is the same Sarlacc pit that like Boba Fett fell into.
Right.
And then at the very end of the episode, episode when Mando is going off on his speedster in his Mandalorian armor with Cobb's Boba Fett armor with him on his speeder. There's a man watching him from a distance, and it is this actor. It is
the actor who played Jango Fett.
Yeah, it's Tamura Morrison, played Jango Fett and is now playing Boba Fett in this moment. So it's kind of like I know Star Wars geeks around the world probably had little mini orgasms at that point.
Oh yeah, probably. so yeah, they're doing Boba Fett again. You mentioned we mentioned Tatooine earlier. Again, they're leaning into nostalgia. They're bringing that back.
That's
I don't
whole
mind.
Show.
Yeah, that's the whole show. I don't mind. It'd be cool. It's cool to see the character again. It'll be interesting to see, once they integrate him into the plot and they have him actually doing stuff. It'll be cool to see that. So I'm looking forward to future episodes. Overall, this episode, I thought it was it's enjoyable. This is a solid show. It's enjoyable. It's popcorn entertainment. It's not, like I said earlier, it has like simple plots and it's very tropey, because it's popcorn entertainment. It's not here to make you think. It's not here to give you revelations about the meaning of life or whatever.
One major point of frustration I had was that at the beginning of the episode, we start with he has a mission to try to find the Jedi so that he can return Baby
Not
Yoda.
the Jedi, he's looking for other Mandalorian.
Well, I was going to say, he has to find the Jedi to give the Baby Yoda to them, but in order to find the Jedi, he's trying to access the Mandalorian information network. Probably just so he can see some more Mandalorians too, because he feels alone.
Right. Exactly.
So there's that as well. And that's we get that startup point right at the very beginning of the episode. We realize that's his goal. That's what he's going for. In the first scene, we get a clue of something that he can do. By the end of the episode, that was completely pointless. It's not going to be pointless for the actual direction of the show because I'm sure Boba Fett and Cobb and other characters are going to play more of a part, obviously as the season continues. But for his actual mission, for what he's trying to do, you could just kind of scrap this entire episode. It solved nothing for him. It gave him no clues, no information, nothing.
That's the show. They just have him he goes a place and he does a thing, and there's a problem there. The problem is not always relevant to his overall mission. It's just a problem he encounters, and then he solves it, and that's the episode.
I just wish it would have ended with Cobb saying, "Hey, I don't know if it's of any help to you, but I heard rumor of a Mandalorian on blah 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 or whatever," and that would at least show where he's going to go for episode 2.
Right.
Even if it's just something that small, but they give
you're right.
no direction.
But you're right. In that way, this is episodic.
Yeah.
Right? Because the plot had nothing to do with the overall direction other than introducing two characters who are undoubtedly going to be important later.
This is one of the most episodic shows I've ever watched.
Yeah.
This is on the level of early police procedurals, before they started introducing character relationships. And it was just the procedural aspect, This is how episodic this show is, Because there's very little depth in character development, just things kind of are what they are. Mando is what he is. Baby Yoda is what he is, and there's no real growth there.
No, it's not like Mando's gonna learn life lessons and change.
The Jedi have been inside him all along.
Inside him all along. I finally learned to love. Oh, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, that's not what this is. And so it's that aspect is a little frustrating. I understand what they're going for, and this is an intentional choice. This isn't they screwed up and it became too episodic. They intentionally were making this very episodic. But I just wish there was a little bit more, just a hint of something else. A sliver of mystery box or something, just to kind of keep something
no mystery
progressing
box.
from episode to episode.
No mystery in this show.
Yeah, there's nothing. No mystery, no character development. I mean, I guess there's some character development, but not enough to even really mention. That's pretty much it for Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1, The Marshal. Yeah, Got a few kind of interesting cameos. Got a lot of good cameos. John Leguizamo, Amy Sedaris, Timothy Olyphant, of course. And
Amy
of course,
Sedaris.
the one that's being talked about here is the Tamara Morrison.
Amy Sedaris reprising the role she played last season, so that's a returning cameo.
Yes.
So
yes.
the other ones are new cameos. You can't call Timothy Olyphant a cameo if he was like
that's true.
The entire episode.
A guest spot.
Yeah, that's a guest spot. That's not a cameo.
But even like W. Earl Brown, who's like a Oliphant adjacent guest cameo added to it. Like there's literally a character that they basically added in because he'd been in something with Oliphant before. Like we're gonna have Oliphant be a big guest player in this episode. Let's grab somebody else from something that Oliphant's done to really hammer it home.
But like I said, this is just popcorn entertainment. It's entertaining. It's entertaining for what it is. It's what I like about this is it doesn't go too goofy. It doesn't get like over the top or obnoxious or annoying. It stays at the level where they know the line where stuff is enjoyable.
So what you're saying is that it's infinitely better than any of the movies since the prequels.
Yeah. They seem to have like a firm grasp of the line where like, okay, like this is acceptable. And then if we have like fucking midi-chlorians or some shit, then that's not acceptable. George Lucas didn't know what was acceptable and not acceptable.
Only if they're midi-chlorians in the sense that it's electronically programmed instrument music.
Yeah. Like acceptable is like this, not acceptable is like fucking Jar Jar Binks showing up.
Yeah.
Or like being goofy for an entire episode, because then it will have lost the plot.
Yeah. Like I said, this is as critical as I am of this is better than any of the prequels, and it's better than any of the new ones too. They've all been trash, basically. My faith in the Star Wars franchise completely evaporated a long time ago. And Mandalorian at least gives something that's like better, you know?
I just kind of hope that we can get to a point with Star Wars at some point where we can get new material and not constantly pander to the classic trilogy. Like, we get those movies were good. People love those movies, but can we move forward, please? Can we just like see new places that aren't Tatooine?
The problem is moving forward in a good way, because the prequels kind of moved forward, but they weren't good.
That's true.
So you have to hit that balance. You have to move forward, but still like either both retain the spirit of the original and also be good. So I think that comes down to, and we've talked about this before, like not on the podcast, just in general, that like what Star Wars really needs is a Kevin Feige, you know? And I don't mean that as literally Kevin Feige. I mean like they have, what's the woman's name that's like in charge of
Kathleen Kennedy.
They have Kathleen Kennedy, but Kathleen Kennedy is no, Kevin Feige, you know? The reason the MCU works so well is like, I think 80% Kevin Feige, and everything else is like, you know, plays a part as well, but it's like 80% Kevin Feige, and that's what Star Wars needs. Star Wars needs somebody on that level.
But I think at this point we're going beyond the scope of the episode at this point.
Yeah, definitely.
We're talking about like Star Wars as a genre, and that's like a big rabbit hole that you can go down.
I can end the conversation off with one thing that I also like from the show, and that is the way they use artwork at the end of every episode.
Oh my god, yes. I love that. I love the way, like...
It's layered, too, so it's like you have the backgrounds moving at different rates.
It's so gorgeous.
I love it.
Yeah, that's like a fantastic touch. I love just... It's the one show where, like, I just sit and watch the credits because, like, I love seeing the artwork, like the storyboards of, like, what happened in the episode.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
They're so good, and they're presented really well, too. You know, it's just the whole thing.
Yes.
But that's it. That's it for Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1, The Marshal. We're going to be talking about this as it continues on. So next week, we're talking about Season 2, Episode 2. So big surprise. That's what we're going to be talking about for the foreseeable future. So yeah, tune in and listen to us bash on Star Wars while celebrating The Mandalorian. I don't know how we're gonna pursue after this, because we're probably not gonna spend as much time talking in generalities next week, because we already did it this week. But all that's left to do is kind of talk about what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. We're recording this on Monday, November 2nd, the day before the election. And on today, The Good Doctor has returned to ABC, and Q Talks comes to Quibi, which is still getting new shows starting up, even though it's in the process of folding. On Wednesday, November 4th, 2020, The A-Word comes to Sundance and Love and Anarchy to Netflix. On Thursday, November 5th, Be Positive to CBS, Mom to CBS, Young Sheldon to CBS, Save Me to Peacock, Riviera to Sundance Now, 2 Weeks to Live to HBO Max, which looks really good. It's Maisie Williams' new show. It got picked up by HBO Max for its US release, and it looks like I joked with you that like we could do a mashup using footage from that and Game of Thrones to make like a story about a time traveling Arya Stark. Because she's killing people in this too. And she has a line in this where she says like, you killed my dad or something, and I'm like, you could totally mash that up with Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, totally. And somebody will. If the show becomes popular enough to me, assuming. Yeah.
Also Paranormal comes to Netflix, and Carmel, Who Killed Maria Marta miniseries comes to Netflix. On Saturday, November 7th, Gemosetto comes to Adult Swim, and Side Hustle comes to Nickelodeon, who I guess is getting back into the content game now. Interesting.
I don't care.
I don't think it's, like, it wasn't listed when I looked it up as, like, family or kids programming. So I wonder if they're gonna, like, actually get into the content game doing, like, primetime stuff, or...
That would be weird. That'd be weird.
Yeah. On Sunday, November 8th, Moonbase 8 comes to Showtime, and NCIS Los Angeles and New Orleans both come to CBS. On Monday, November 9th, Industry to HBO, Undercover to Netflix. On Tuesday, November 10th, A Teacher miniseries comes to Hulu. This is, I always joke with my family are almost all teachers. And there's always stories, and this is what this is about like the female teacher that sleeps with her student and gets pregnant. It's like, it's something that really happens, but it's also become like a trope in like stories and stuff. And so every time I see one of those stories, I like look over at like my mom or whatever other teacher in my family happens to be in the room and say, teachers. All teachers. They're all like this, you know? But if you want to watch one of those stories, that's coming to Hulu. Also, Dash and Lily is coming to Netflix on that day. On Wednesday, November 11th, it is Chicago Day on NBC with returns of Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, and Chicago PD. It's a night of Chicago. SWAT returns to CBS. The Liberator, a miniseries, comes to Netflix. This is like a war movie, but it's like a series, a miniseries, but it's all done with like rotoscoping animation, kind of like a Scanner Darkly. So that's kind of interesting. Also, Auntie Donna's Big Ol' House of Fun. I have no idea what that is. Comes to Netflix. Then on Thursday, November 12th, let's play a little game, Will. This game is called I Can't Believe This Is Still on TV. Do you have any guesses?
I don't know. Law and Order.
Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, yeah.
Returns on ABC. Also Station 19 on ABC, which is one of the Grey's Anatomy spin-offs. The Unicorn comes to CBS, and Law and Order SVU to NBC. On Friday, November 13th, The Blacklist returns on NBC, Alex Rider on IMDb TV, The Minions of Midas miniseries to Netflix. On Sunday, November 15th, The Crown returns to Netflix. And on Monday, November 16th, All Rise to CBS, Bob Hart's Abishola to CBS, Bull to CBS, The Neighborhood to CBS, and His Dark Materials to HBO. So this is basically the entire delayed fall slate. All these shows that were supposed to come in September and October, and now they're coming in like mid-November, basically.
Yeah.
That's it. As I mentioned, next week we're going to be talking about episode 2 of The Mandalorian second season. Until then, you can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will. He is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can subscribe to the podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast, and the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Good night.
Good night.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very best in genre